The afternoon I learned I couldn't stand beside my own son at his wedding altar. I was holding the wire transfer receipt for the $58,000 I had just sent to cover the entire ceremony. I placed it on the kitchen counter and stood there motionless for a long while, unsure what to do with my hands. My name is Leonard Whitfield. I'm 64 years old, a retired mechanical engineer, and a widower. My wife Sylvia died 3 years ago after a lengthy illness. Gareth is our only child. This wedding was meant to be the first major family event since her passing, and I had hoped to make it meaningful for both of us. I phoned Gareth to let him know the payment had cleared. "Hey, just wanted to confirm the Riverside Gardens transfer went through. You're all set for Saturday." "Oh yeah, thanks, Dad." His tone was distant and distracted, with music playing and the clink of glasses and laughter in the background. "So what time should I arrive on Friday for the rehearsal dinner? I thought I'd come early and help with setup if you need it." There was a brief silence, then another voice took over, smooth and polished. "Leonard." It was Nadine, my soon-to-be daughter-in-law. "The rehearsal dinner is mainly for the wedding party and our immediate family. We're keeping it small and intimate." I shifted the phone to my other ear. "Gareth is my son. I'm his father, aren't I?" "Of course. But it's really organized around the people participating in the ceremony, the ones walking down the aisle and standing at the altar. You know how these things work." I didn't know. "I'm walking Gareth down the aisle," I said deliberately. Another pause. I could hear Gareth murmuring something quietly in the background, his voice cautious. "Actually," Nadine continued, "we've decided Gareth's uncle, my father-in-law's brother, will stand with him instead. It just looks more balanced in the photos, more symmetrical." The kitchen suddenly felt too still. Sylvia and I had renovated it together 22 years earlier. New surfaces, fresh tile, and the window over the sink she had specifically wanted so she could look out at the backyard while cooking. I stared at that window. "Gareth," I said, "is that correct?" He came back on the line. "Dad, it's just that Nadine's family has certain traditions. It's nothing personal." I told him I understood. I told him I would see them on Saturday at 2 o'clock. Then the call ended. I laid the phone down beside my checkbook. The transfer receipt sat there next to it, $58,000. I had paid for the venue, catering, photographer, flowers, and band. Everything they had chosen and adjusted over 14 months of planning. And I had done it all without objection or strings attached, because that's what I believed a father should do. I barely slept that night. I sat in Sylvia's favorite reading chair, the one with the blue cushion she had recovered herself twice because she loved its shape. I gazed at our wedding picture on the mantel. City Hall, 1986, just 2 witnesses and $40 between us. No music, no flowers, no fancy location, only a vow. We had honored that vow through my engineering paycheck and her nursing shifts, through a miscarriage, through my mother's sickness, through raising Gareth, through every challenge, especially in that final difficult year. At some point, I had made a different sort of commitment to Gareth, an unwritten one, that I would always agree, that I would always be there to catch him. He had come to rely on it the same way you trust a wall will hold you when you lean back. The following morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my bank statements spread out before me. Since Sylvia's death, I had monitored my finances closely. A retired engineer living on a pension can't afford to be careless with figures. What I saw when I really examined them hit me hard. In the 3 years since Gareth had met Nadine, I had given them $97,000. I had noted the total once in a notebook I kept in my desk, but seeing the actual statements laid out with dates and account numbers made it feel entirely different. The figure now carried real weight. $15,000 for the down payment on their condo when they first moved in together. $8,000 when their credit cards reached their limits the next holiday season. $12,000 for Nadine's online retail startup that she quit after 8 months. $58,000 for the wedding. Smaller amounts in between. $400 here, $600 there, $1,100 for what Nadine described as a plumbing crisis, $800 for a surprise car registration fee. All of it accumulating quietly while I convinced myself this was simply what fathers do. I opened my laptop and reviewed the joint checking account I had created years earlier for real emergencies. I had added Gareth to it when Sylvia first became ill so he could assist if needed. The balance was only $3,247. It should have been closer to $7,000. I opened the transaction log. 6 withdrawals in the last 5 months. $500, $300, $1,200, $400, $200. None explained. No messages asking permission. Just gone. I sat staring at the screen for some time, then picked up the phone and dialed First National. This is Leonard Whitfield. I need to remove 2 people from my joint checking account. All right, Mr. Whitfield. Who are you removing? My son and his wife. I spent the rest of the morning on the phone, handling every account where they had access and every automatic payment I had arranged over the years to simplify things for them. I ended all of it. When I finished, my hands were steadier than they had been in months. That afternoon, I drove to a coffee shop across town that I had never visited before, a place where I wouldn't bump into anyone familiar, and ordered a plain black coffee I didn't actually want. I simply needed to sit somewhere that wasn't my own house. I was halfway through the cup when my phone rang. It was Gareth. Dad, what did you do? The bank contacted Nadine. I removed both of you from my accounts. Why would you do that without discussing it with us first? Because I'm not a bank, Gareth. I'm your father. That's not fair. We have bills. Nadine's business is just starting and we're tight on money right now. So am I. I have a mortgage, utilities, car insurance, medical expenses. I have my own life to support. His tone changed, growing firmer. I recognized it. It didn't sound completely like him. You're just being petty because of the rehearsal dinner issue. Petty, I repeated. The word felt bitter on my tongue. I paid $58,000 for your wedding. I'm not even permitted to stand at the altar with my own son, and I'm the one being petty. Silence followed. I've given you $97,000 in 3 years, Gareth. That's more than I earned in 2 years of work. And the instant I stopped, you call me petty. He didn't respond directly. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter and flatter. You're going to regret this. We'll manage on our own. The call ended. I sat with the phone lying face down on the table and waited for regret or anxiety to hit me. It never arrived. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a very long time. Relief. Simple, clear relief, as if I had finally put down a heavy burden I had carried so long I no longer realized it wasn't mine to bear. 3 quiet days went by. I worked in the garden, repaired a loose plank on the back deck that had annoyed me for 2 summers, and cleaned out the garage the way I had intended to since Sylvia died. On that final day in the garage, I discovered a box of her belongings I had put aside until I felt ready. I wasn't certain I was ready, but I opened it anyway. Old nursing textbooks, a hospital coffee mug from the place she had worked for 19 years, and beneath it all, a journal with a dark green cover. I hadn't seen it since before her illness. I stood holding it for a minute before carrying it into the house. Most entries were ordinary. Comments about her daily life, little observations, things she appreciated, and the occasional work annoyance. I wasn't searching for anything specific. I was just reading to feel nearer to her again. Then I came across an entry from about 4 years earlier, roughly a year before her diagnosis. Gareth had introduced Nadine that month. She asked Leonard about his retirement accounts at dinner tonight. First time meeting her, and not out of curiosity, in a calculating way. He didn't notice. I did. I don't know what to do with that. 2 pages later, another note. Gareth seems happy. I won't say anything. Maybe I'm mistaken about her. I hope I am wrong. I sat at the kitchen table with the journal open for a long while. Sylvia had recognized it right from the start. She had noticed and stayed silent because she refused to be the obstacle between Gareth and someone he cared for. That was her nature. She believed people would eventually discover the truth on their own. I had simply taken longer than she likely anticipated. On Thursday morning, the doorbell rang. A man in a tailored suit stood on my porch holding a leather briefcase and a manila envelope. He said my name. I confirmed it. He handed me the envelope and returned to his car without speaking. I locked the door, sat at the kitchen table, and opened it. Complaint for breach of contract. Plaintiffs: Gareth Whitfield and Nadine Holloway. Defendant: Leonard Whitfield. I read it 3 times before the meaning sank in. They were suing me for $25,000. Honeymoon costs, emotional distress, breach of trust. The allegation was that I had repeatedly made specific verbal promises to pay for their honeymoon, that they had depended on those promises in good faith, and that I had deliberately and maliciously withdrawn support. My own son had served me with legal papers. I set the documents down and looked around the kitchen, the window above the sink, the counters Sylvia had selected, the chair where she used to drink her morning coffee before work. For 3 years, I had held on to this house because leaving it felt like leaving her. Sitting there that morning with the papers in front of me, I finally understood she wasn't inside the house. She lived in the journal. She lived in the choices I made. She wasn't in the square footage. My phone rang, an unknown number. I answered anyway. "Mr. Whitfield, this is Gloria Harmon. I'm an attorney. A colleague told me about your case. Have you been served yet?" "About 20 minutes ago." "Are you by yourself right now?" I glanced around the empty kitchen. "Yes." "Would you be open to meeting me this afternoon? The consultation is free." I agreed before she finished speaking. Gloria Harmon's office was downtown on the 4th floor of a building that smelled of old carpet and coffee. She was about 50, wearing frameless glasses, calm in the steady way people become when they've faced truly difficult situations. She read the complaint silently, jotting small notes in the margins with a pen she kept clicking. When she finished, she placed it down and looked straight at me. "This is classic financial elder abuse presented as a contract dispute." "I'm 64, I said. "You're over 60 and a widower. Adult children demanding money with legal threats. That fits Oregon law." She leaned forward. "Tell me the full story. Start at the beginning." So I did. The engagement news, the initial money requests, the condo down payment, the credit card rescue, Nadine's abandoned business, the wedding expenses accumulating over 14 months, the joint account, the call about being replaced at the altar, the threat Gareth made before ending the call. Everything. She listened without interrupting. When I stopped, she asked one question. "Do you have records?" "Bank statements for 3 years, canceled checks, every text requesting money, every email confirming transfers. I keep thorough documentation. I was an engineer for 35 years. It's how I'm wired." She smiled slightly for the first time. "Excellent, because we're not only defending this case, we're going to make them regret filing it." She took out a legal pad and began writing. "Here's what you need to know about their claim. A verbal promise to give a gift isn't a binding contract. It doesn't matter how often you said you'd help or wanted them to have a strong beginning. Without a written agreement detailing the amount and terms, there's no contract. Their lawyer knows this. They're hoping you'll settle because you love your son and want to avoid a public conflict." "I'm not settling. I can tell." She continued writing. "We'll file a response denying everything. Then we'll counterclaim that any funds provided with an expectation of future support should be treated as loans, not gifts. Gareth told you they would look after you once things got better. That creates consideration. It could make the full $97,000 recoverable. My mind felt like it was processing numbers that refused to add up correctly. Is that really possible? If we can show a pattern of promises exchanged for financial help, yes. We may not recover everything, but the possibility of repaying six figures usually shifts the perspective for people who sued expecting an easy payout. She looked up. I want to be straightforward. This will get tougher before it improves. Gareth may say things in court documents that sting. Nadine's lawyer will try to portray you as controlling or resentful about the wedding. Can you handle that? I thought of Sylvia's journal on my kitchen table and the entry she wrote 4 years ago after first meeting Nadine. He didn't notice. I noticed. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Over the next week, Gloria and I assembled the case materials. Every bank record, transfer receipt, text conversation, and email. She arranged them in a binder with colored tabs and a summary page up front. She called it the foundation. Seeing the numbers compiled was difficult, not because they were complex, but because they were straightforward. $15,000 for the condo in March of year 1, $8,000 for credit cards the following January, $12,000 for Nadine's business in spring, $58,000 for the wedding spread over 14 months, plus the smaller transfers that bridged the gaps, $400, $600, $1,100, $800, all totaling $97,000 across exactly 3 years. I also contacted my old friend Stuart Nolan. We had known each other since our boys played Little League in the early 2000s. He was a retired carpenter, direct and honest, the type who recalled conversations precisely. He had been at my house the previous summer when I clearly told Gareth I would help him begin, but couldn't promise exact amounts afterward. He had heard it. He was prepared to testify. That one detail undermined the heart of their lawsuit. They claimed I had made a definite verbal promise about the honeymoon. Stuart's recollection created a clear contradiction for any judge. 2 weeks before the hearing, Gareth appeared at my front door. He looked slimmer than before, with fatigue in his eyes. "We need to talk," he said. "Not about the lawsuit." I didn't ask him inside. I remained in the doorway. "Nadine and I think it would be best if you didn't attend the wedding." I looked at my son, standing on the porch of the home where he had grown up, and absorbed those words. "You're disinviting me from the wedding I paid for? It's going to feel uncomfortable with everything going on. We don't want that strain on our day." "Gareth," I kept my voice even, "I have given you $97,000. I have never arrived uninvited. I have never caused a scene. I have never demanded anything in return, and you're standing here telling me I can't come to your wedding." Something shifted in his expression, a brief glimpse of understanding, before it vanished and he looked aside. "It's just how it has to be," he said. He turned and walked back to his car. I watched him drive off, then went inside and called Gloria. "They uninvited me from the wedding." A brief pause. "I'm sorry, Leonard." "Don't be. Now I know precisely what I'm facing." The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined. Harsh fluorescent lights, faded blue carpet, 2 counsel tables set close together. Gareth and Nadine sat on the left with their lawyer, a sharp-suited young man who acted as if he billed by the syllable. Gloria and I sat on the right. Stuart Nolan waited in the gallery behind us. Judge Beverly Crane entered and everyone rose. She was in her late 50s, reading glasses on a chain, carrying the composed air of someone who had heard every possible tale and had stopped being shocked by them. Their attorney spoke first. He presented the promissory estoppel case methodically and assuredly. He claimed I had made repeated clear promises to cover the honeymoon. He said Gareth and Nadine had trusted those promises sincerely, reserving travel and lodging based on my assurances. He said I had then abruptly and without notice withdrawn support, leaving them financially strained just before their wedding. He offered his evidence, text messages where I wrote things like, "Don't worry, I've got you," and "I want this to be everything you hoped for." Emails stating, "I'll take care of it." a voicemail telling Gareth, "You know I'm always here." Removed from context, they appeared to form a record of unfulfilled commitments. Then Nadine testified. She remained poised in a pale blue dress, hair neatly tied back, light makeup. She spoke in a controlled tone about how I had always expressed love as her father-in-law by providing financially, how she and Gareth had built their plans around my assurances, and how my sudden change had caught them off guard at the worst moment. "We had already paid deposits on the flights and hotel," she said. "We couldn't recover them. We had no means to cover the shortfall because we had organized everything expecting what Leonard said he would give." She glanced at me, calm and steady. "I don't understand what changed. I don't understand why someone would make a promise and then withdraw it." Judge Crane noted something. Then it was our turn. Gloria rose and allowed the room to quiet. "Your Honor, the plaintiffs want this court to see Leonard Whitfield as a father who broke his promises. The records show a very different picture." She opened the binder and guided Judge Crane through each entry. The $15,000 condo payment, the $8,000 credit card rescue, the $12,000 for Nadine's unsuccessful venture, the $58,000 for the wedding paid completely over 14 months, and the additional smaller transfers totaling $97,000 across exactly 3 years. "This is not a man who neglects his family," Gloria said. "This is a man who has been steadily drawn upon until he finally said enough." Stewart then testified. He was direct and calm, as people are when they have nothing to conceal. He described sitting at my kitchen table the previous summer when I plainly told Gareth I would assist him in getting started, but could not guarantee specific sums moving forward. He recalled the discussion clearly. He had thought little of it then. It had simply been a father speaking honestly to his son about his situation. Their lawyer questioned him aggressively. Stewart remained steady. Then I took the stand. I described to Judge Crane the phone call the night I confirmed the $58,000, being informed I would not attend the rehearsal dinner, being substituted at the altar by someone Nadine selected, discovering the joint account had been reduced by 6 withdrawals over 5 months without any discussion. The conversation with Gareth where he said, "We'll handle it our way," before hanging up, and standing at my own front door 2 weeks before the wedding being told not to attend. "Your Honor," I said, "I would have given my son anything I could afford. I did give him nearly everything available to me over 3 years. But the moment I stopped, he sued me. I don't believe that is a son asking for his father's help. I believe it is something else." The room fell silent when I finished. Judge Crane removed her glasses and placed them down. "Let me confirm I understand this correctly," she said, addressing their attorney. "Your clients received $58,000 for a wedding, $15,000 for a condominium down payment, and additional transfers totaling nearly $100,000 over 3 years, and they are now asking this court for another $25,000 because Mr. Whitfield chose not to pay for their honeymoon." "Your Honor, the alleged verbal commitments," Judge Crane interrupted, "expressions of intent to help a family member are not enforceable contracts, especially when, as defense counsel has clearly shown, Mr. Whitfield had already offered support well beyond any reasonable expectation." She looked directly at Gareth and Nadine. "This situation appears before the court with some frequency. Adult children who treat parental giving as a right and react to its end with legal action." Gareth stared at the table. Nadine sat motionless. "This court denies the plaintiff's claim entirely," Judge Crane ruled. "The plaintiffs must cover the defendant's legal costs. Additionally, I am referring this case to Adult Protective Services for examination as possible financial elder abuse." The gavel struck. I remained seated for a moment, letting it settle. In the hallway afterward, Gloria shook my hand. "You did it, Leonard." "We did it," I replied. Through the glass doors, I could see Gareth and Nadine near the elevator, not speaking. Their lawyer was closing his briefcase with quick, precise motions of someone eager to leave. Nadine said something sharp and low. Gareth looked at the floor. I watched them briefly, then turned the opposite way, exiting through the main doors into the Portland afternoon. The air carried the scent of recent rain and freshly cut grass nearby. A food truck opposite the courthouse was busy serving customers. Ordinary people on an ordinary Thursday, unaware that a quiet, difficult conflict had just concluded inside. I bought a coffee and sat on a bench in the park across the street. I observed a father pushing a stroller down the path, two older men sharing sandwiches on the next bench and laughing, a woman walking her dog that paused to sniff every sidewalk crack. I didn't feel like celebrating, but I experienced something I hadn't felt in years. Not exactly joy, but peace. The sort that arrives after you finally take the step you should have taken long ago, but were too hesitant to make. My phone vibrated. A message from Harriet Otom, my neighbor 3 doors away. A retired nurse who had brought me meals every week for the first 2 months after Sylvia died. Heard what happened from Stuart. Just wanted to say I'm proud of you. Come over for dinner this week. I replied, I would like that very much. In the months that followed, my life shifted in small but genuine ways that belonged to me. I sold the house. It took time to decide, but once I chose, I didn't doubt it. It had been a good home, and I had been content there, yet I had preserved it like a memorial, and Sylvia would never have tolerated that. I moved into a smaller downtown condo overlooking the Willamette River. 2 bedrooms, a serviceable kitchen, and a balcony I used each morning. Stuart and I enrolled in a woodworking class at the community center on Wednesday nights. 2 retired men building pieces no one requested, debating the proper way to connect corners, and laughing more than we had in a long time. I wasn't particularly skilled. Stuart was better and enjoyed reminding me. I began volunteering at the public library on Tuesday afternoons, reading stories to children. Some were 5 or 6 years old, gathered on a rug, fully engaged with the tale on the page. It became the highlight of my week. I drove to Seattle that fall, ate fresh salmon at Pike Place Market, and strolled the waterfront for an afternoon with no schedule. I flew to Denver and spent a relaxed weekend with a college friend I hadn't seen in 15 years. We drank more beer than we should have and discussed aging as if it were an absurd event happening to other people. I lived for myself, not for Gareth, not for Nadine, and not for anyone else's ideas of who I should be. At first, it felt strange. Then it felt correct. 3 months after the court date, my phone rang at 2 in the morning. Gareth's number. I nearly ignored it, but I answered. He was crying. I hadn't heard him cry since he was a teenager and broke his arm falling from the oak tree in our backyard. She's gone, Dad. His voice trembled. She left 2 weeks ago, right after the ruling. She just packed up and left. I sat up in the darkness and listened. I've been trying to work up the courage to call you for 2 weeks, he said. I didn't know how. A long silence. I didn't realize what she was doing, or maybe I did, and refused to see it. I kept convincing myself it was okay, that you had plenty, that it wasn't serious. I let her persuade me. His voice softened. I'm sorry, Dad. I don't know if that matters now, but I'm sorry. I stayed quiet for a moment. It does matter, I said. We spoke until nearly 4 o'clock. About Sylvia, about his boyhood, about the oak tree, about what he truly wanted his life to become now that he had to decide for himself. It was the most candid talk we had shared in years. Before ending the call, I said, "Come over on Saturday. Stuart and I are building a bookshelf. You can lend a hand." He came. He wasn't skilled at it. We teased him, he laughed at himself, and it was all right. That evening, I stood on the condo balcony with a cup of coffee and watched the sunset over the river. The sky shifted from orange to pink to a rich blue that Sylvia would have loved to capture in paint. My name is Leonard Whitfield. I'm 64 years old. I spent many years serving as a safety net for people who had stopped seeing me as a person. I'm finished with that. If any part of this story feels familiar, if you recognize the gradual shift of being needed yet not truly valued, then understand this: you are permitted to stop. Drawing a boundary is not unkindness. It is not resentment. It is not abandoning those you care about. Sometimes it is the only method to discover who truly cares for you in return. And sometimes, if you endure the difficult stretch, you emerge on the other side with your life still whole, and at last, authentically yours. Thanks for watching my video. Like and subscribe.